Welcome back, everybody, to Day 7 of the Hearthstone World Championships here from Burbank, California. My name is Frodan, joined once again by That's Admirable to bring you the next series of the day. Who do we have?
This one is Neobility versus Allandang, and both of these guys really just kind of ladder warriors playing their way through, trying to beat everybody up. You got a little bit of Neobility yesterday. Very close match. Very strong plays so far. Really looking forward to seeing him play again.
Yeah, that's right. So this is an opportunity for both of them to continue to, pad their resume, so to speak. But at the same time, this is elimination. Neobility lost yesterday, unable to, protect that top 8 seed, which he worked really hard to get. However, we don't really know too much about either of these players outside of just the fact that they placed well into the seeds or even got to this tournament. So do you have any more information about them at all?
Really just about their finishes in particular. Neobility yesterday, talking about how hard he worked to get this spot, actually had 4 top 20 finishes this season, number 2 being his best. And Allandang actually had 5 top 50 finishes and 1 finish inside the top 100 as well as that, with number 6 and number 8 being 2 of his best ones to highlight there. So a lot of hard work done by both of these guys to get to where they are. Kind of unfortunate to see them both in elimination rounds, but this is what happens as you come to the closer state or the later stages of the tournament.
Yeah,
someone's going to win, someone's going to lose.
Only 6 people can get through out of the 40.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a lot of people who we feel like maybe deserve to go through. They put all this effort in, but unfortunately, that's just how the nature of competition works. I guess if you flip it the other way, we have 6 players who managed to survive, hell and fire to be able to get through to where it is. Well, I think we're going to find out really soon what's going to happen. Before we do, we also want to thank Amazon for being able to partner with us here. They're doing a coin promotion. You can get 20% off, I believe, on all your packs. All you have to do is just go to Amazon.com/Hearthstone and buy some coins, and you can use those coins as currency for the App Store to buy packs, get some coins back. Might as well spend the coins again on more packs. It is a little bit of a dangerous thing when you start buying packs, because I can't stop buying packs. And then opening packs as a result.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I've been victim of that myself.
I will go ahead and tell people that it's a very rewarding and fulfilling experience.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking to fill out your collection, maybe you're one of those guys who likes to have a lot of gold and legendaries like I do.
Sure.
Great way to start doing it. I mean, it's about the cheapest you're going to get packs. If you're going to buy them, why not buy them then?
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, we shall get ready for our 7th match of the day, which is Neobility versus Allandang. Now, I did hear some very interesting things about Neobility. Apparently, he is not only a top 8 player, but he's also one of the best arena players in the entire world.
Wow, that's actually kind of interesting to hear.
By statistics.
Well, typically, the kind of people who play arena and play constructed, just 2 very different kinds of players.
But he plays both.
Very interesting
at a high level with the high win percentages in both. So not only is he playing top levels of constructed, but apparently his wins per run and his win percentage overall in arena is really high.
Do you have a number on that exactly, or is just?
I do, but I think I was requested not to share it. All I can just say he's one of the best.
Yeah, well, that's.
And I got it obviously from the official source too. So it's like
no, Frodan heard that from a guy off the street who was playing Hearthstone on his phone.
Some homeless man who's like Deckard Cain. He's like, I heard one day that Neobility was good at the arena. And
he once defeated Diablo.
Well, he's not playing Patron. If you're going to defeat the Diablo, I think that'd be my first deck to play against.
Yeah, he does have a Diablo he's going to have to defeat, though. You take a look at the other side of things. He is facing off against a Warlock here. And that's that always seems to spell a little bit of trouble for these guys when they have to face off against Warlock. And this just isn't any Warlock, by the way. This is a Dragon's Warlock with Malagos in the build as well. And Patron Warrior Combo Druid to fill that out. And then Tempo Mage is something that we haven't been seeing a ton from players. But the players who've been playing it, it looks like it's a very strong deck for them.
That's right. The Tempo Mage has been very effective. Firebat, of course, coming to mind just earlier today. Being able to take an important W, because I think Archon was originally struggling a little bit, but they recovered some, even though Zalay dropped. Moz and Firebat came through today. We have the Paladin versus that Dragon Malagos that you're talking about. Or I mean, it's kind of hard to say that it's all oriented around Malagos. Now it's more of like a mid-range Dragon Warlock with late-game finish burst potential through Malagos.
Yeah, well, typically, I feel like the name of the deck is going to be like the win condition of the deck, or like one of the major win conditions for it. And so while it can win with just like regular damage from minions, its spectacular finish, of course, is going to be Malagos and some burn spells with it.
It is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and that's really what the big talking point for it is. But he's going to have to be facing off against the Secrets Paladin first. And this deck can provide a lot of trouble for Warlock decks if they get rolling a little bit early. And something Neobility has in his version as well, which we haven't seen in all of them, is Piloted Shredder. So the staying power of Piloted Shredder combined with some of the tempo plays that you have could be very dangerous. The one thing that Allandang has going for him in this match is that he's not relying on stuff like Twilight Drake. He's not having to couple stuff with Ancient Watcher. He's just got good old strong cards. And so if he can kind of match card for card what Neobility is going to be doing, I think he's going to find himself at an advantage.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that pans out. Minibot is still one of the most efficient cards that's hard to deal with, not just for Warlock, but every class. And it looks as if Neobility is going to be caught in a very awkward spot. Like, well, how do I want to go about using these secrets? Am I going to use a competitive spirit on, some of the small things? Am I going to be saving it? Do I want to be dropping it because I want to dump my hand? And how does that relate to the idea that I have Mysterious Challenger as well? And then you also have to account for how many kinds of secrets are in the deck. Is there only one repetitive switch? Probably. Is there only one competitive secret? I mean, these are all different things that you have to account for.
Yeah, this seems to me like in playing this Paladin deck and playing against it, at turn 3 is typically where their soft spot really is. They have these big power spikes on turn 2, on turn 4, and on turn 6 with like Shielded Minibot, True Silver or Pilot Shredder, and then of course Mysterious Challenger. And that 3 and 5 are kind of the soft spots for this. They don't have like a lot of great cards that fill in this gap. And this is an example of one of those turns. I mean, Hero Power and a Secret, not exactly what he's looking for. Muster for Battle would be a lot better here. And now Allandang, this is his chance to really start securing a spot like this. Imp Gang Boss can potentially reign terror on this board.
Yeah, it could. However, I think it also, there is, Muster's a little bit late here, but I think there is a case for Neobility to also play the Shredder and get a little bit aggressive. Because that's the whole point. If you recognize that it's Imp Gang Boss and you know that your opponent's playing Dragon Warlock, you know that you don't have to be worried about cards like Molten Giants.
Yeah.
You have to be very aggressive, and so you just push, and hopefully your opponent doesn't have enough ways to stop the pressure.
And that's really kind of the big difference between playing against the deck the first time, like on ladder, and playing in a tournament where you've had more time to kind of scout out what's been happening and you get a little bit more information. Neobility knows that he can just almost relentlessly push in this matchup. And so that can spell some trouble for Allandang, but at the same time, this deck does have great recovery tools, be it the Twilight Guardian, which is just going to be a very efficient taunt, be it Hellfire, which is going to help sweep out board positions. Really a lot of different options for both players, even though their game plans are pretty much the same, which is offense and defense.
What's also pretty awkward, too, is that now he's going to, it feels like, forever be behind the tempo of his opponent unless he's willing to play a lot of his removal options, and I think that's a little too inefficient. So he's going to have to be reliant on things like the Twilight Guardian. But then his opponent might be able to take proactive stuff against it and then set up a really good Mysterious Challenger. Then how do you fight back from that point on?
Exactly, and that's what really feels like the real hesitation for me, where Allandang's concerned is, how does Blessing of Kings fight against his Twilight Guardian, maybe even something like Iron Beak Owl. All those cards are playing a big effect. He doesn't want to just take a billion damage and then be stuck in a spot where he's always fighting from behind. He really kind of needs this to be a big roadblock. It just so happens Neobility has another way to push through.
Do you think the Owl here is the best move?
I mean, it's not exciting, but it certainly is helping protect some of your value. He thinks his value is good enough the way it is, though. Wants the Owl for a much better position. I can't really blame him for this. I don't see anything wrong with this play. Having the Secret Keeper and the Muster for Battle, maybe you just feel okay getting a little bit extra value, maybe playing for some tempo here. But this position really kind of leaves him open to Shadow Flame or Hellfire, and this is the kind of situation I think I would want to avoid.
It's very susceptible to Hellfire. In fact, so much to the point where your opponent might even get the board lead because a Hellfire actually allows the Imp Gang Boss to leave a 1-1 on the board.
Yeah, but this is the kind of dynamic of this matchup that happens oftentimes, is when you have these pretty much only offense decks versus the only defense situations, is they're just going to have to take a big risk and hope that the defensive deck doesn't have the right tool. They only run a couple of different options. Like, there might even only be one copy of Hellfire in here. If he doesn't have it, you're in fantastic shape. When he does have it, unfortunate.
You're sad. But he does follow it up with Mysterious Challenger as well, which is still another card that just can single-handedly bring you, slingshot you back into the game.
Yeah, which is really the saving grace of this hand, is how powerful that card can be in the right situation. This happens to be one of those situations as well, so going to look forward to see what he can do. But Allandang just comfortable oozing a 1-3 weapon here, which is kind of surprising. I think that this is a byproduct of not only just wanting to have another minion in play, but also this does save him 3 long-term damage.
Does, and it also helps him do stuff on the board after this mysterious challenger pulls a few secrets. So he can use it to either pick off something that's been redemptioned, or he has an opportunity to buff it to do direct damage and kill the mysterious challenger.
Yeah, and now a lot of options for Allandang, and that's really how these board sweepers seem to be working against this Paladin deck. You know, a couple times this event I've seen Secrets Paladin get a very big lead, and then one board sweep will cripple it. Yesterday we saw Muzzy use Brawl on turn 4, and that just Bone Tap was left with 1 card in his hand afterwards.
Oof.
You know, in this situation, Implosion for 4, always a good thing to see. But Allandang, you know, the Hellfire swept out almost everything Neobility had. It's just tough to recover from that kind of spot. Seems to be the big weakness of the deck.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that as well. However, there are ways for him to adequately deal with this. The Abusive Sergeant will allow him to clear, and then he can also Mortal Coil as well, even though the small sequences you generally want to draw before, ultimately it has no consequence because you need to fill out that mana.
Yeah, there's not a card that's changing the Abusive Sergeant happening, so not too terribly important here. And at this point, Neobility is, you know, he's running off fumes at this point, and this is the kind of desperation that you're going to see happen. Blessing of Kings, without being able to attack and just hoping that it's enough to maybe carry him through. You know, Divine Favor may be a draw that can change this game.
It could be, considering that Warlock is going to try and leverage the board and then eventually feel comfortable to tap. But at the same time, if I'm Allandang, I definitely feel like one of the easiest ways to lose is to let the Divine Favor get a lot of value.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try to emphasize too much on the tap.
Yeah, I think that life tapping is pretty close to out of the question at this point. His hand's just so strong. You know, what else does he need to win the game?
He's got Dr. Boom. Like, still, even if he didn't have the Dark Bomb in that scenario, I'd still advise against doing so. Still waiting on him to finish all of his attacks, and we're seeing if Neobility can pick up Divine Favor. He's running out of time. He can't really afford to take too much more damage.
Ooh.
That's pretty good, considering that Avenge is also the secret, so most likely the Boom Bots will be able to buff something.
It's just unfortunate that Dr. Boom, I'm sorry, the Big Game Hunter is sitting right in Allandang's hand. Just seems like he's got all the answers this game.
Right. It was one of those scenarios where Allandang was able to control the aggro very well. This is something that the Malygos Warlock, even before the Dragon Warlock really became the main thing, it was actually pretty good at handling some of the aggro because it had a lot of anti-aggro tools. If Gang Boss was good at fighting early on, you had Zombie Chow, you have Implosion.
Yeah.
What it struggled was like how it handled mid-range pressure decks like Druid and other things. So in all honesty, it feels like this is a good matchup for the Warlock.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you too. Imp Gang Boss does such a fantastic job holding off early pressure. Not necessarily by preventing you from taking damage, but just providing such a value threat to your opponent, and then having just a couple ways to short up again, like Implosion, Hellfire, just really strong options to make sure that you can make this mid-game push. You end up in situations like this quite a bit. Does have 8 damage though now with these 2, but I think he's just facing down too much at this point.
Right. He has to start trading onto the board with this because there's just too much damage on board. And that's going to also effectively give up his only chance to win.
Yeah. So really, from Neobility's standpoint, do you think there's any way he could have avoided the Hellfire being so devastating to his board position? Or
going back to it, I feel like there was, but I can understand where you were explaining it. You were talking about how he was like, if it's a one-of, he has to have it, and if he doesn't, you're in a very good lead. And you also had the Mysterious Challenge as a backup.
Yeah,
so.
and you potentially even have Divine Favor as a draw as well.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. We can see he does have 2 copies of Hellfire. Allandang does. You know, yeah, it's information Neobility would certainly want to have. Isn't going to see it this game though, and will drop a game with the Secret Paladin. And I think that Allandang pretty happy to get this this Malygos Warlock out of the way, because Tempo Mage and Combo Druid are the 2 decks afterwards, and I know that this deck can kind of suffer against those 2. Tempo Mage offers a lot of early game pressure, and Combo Druid not really weak to the kind of stuff that this deck's trying to do.
No, the minions match up much better overall than the mid-sized minions. Like Blackwood Corruptor, for example, Implosion. They might kill off things like Shredder, but they have really trouble dealing with like Druid the Claw and etc. So it feels... And not to mention, Druid can also continue to pressure and get Innervate and then threaten for Savage Roar, and then you don't have Molten Giants or anything.
Right.
Less emphasis on the taunts. So I think overall, that was a very important win, like you said. And you know, I'm actually really happy to see that the Dragon Warlock is a thing. You know, people are able to build out in many different ways. Warlock for a long time was one of the only classes that saw diversity in its build.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, if you bring Druid, it's this type of Druid. If you bring Rogue, it's this type of Rogue. If you bring Mage, you even dare say it's like this type of Mage. But at that time, Warlock had Zoo, and it had the Handlock, and that was frustrating. And then it got more, and then it got more, and now there's like Dreadsteed Warlock, and it's like, will the madness never end?
Have you seen that Dreadsteed clip, by the way, where they both have 2 knife jugglers, and they both have 5 Dreadsteeds? And the knife jugglers are gigantic.
I have not, but I know where this is going.
Oh, it's a great video. It's like a 16-minute video of Dreadsteeds and knife juggles happening.
That is sick.
It's beautiful. It's a thing. If you haven't watched it,
nothing more than to see that actually happen.
It just actually happened in a tournament.
Yeah,
it'd be so great. Yeah. So,
just for my own peace of mind. So eventually, one of the knife jugglers died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Eventually,
like,
somebody dies.
Yeah. Eventually, either knife juggler dies or somebody dies.
It's both. Yeah.
Both actually.
I think it's actually both of them.
Because if he kills off the knife juggler, then it doesn't kill your.
Well, I think it's a sequence that just keeps going until eventually, like, there's just no knives left to be thrown. Because the players
are infinite.
I'm pretty sure the players are sitting at 0 until there's no knives left to be thrown. And then once the knife jugglers are actually dead and the players are dead, then somebody dies. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how it worked.
Oh, that's so weird. I have to go watch that video right now. I'm AFK.
Well, right now we're going to have to watch this one. Wild Growth in the Druid's Hand, always a welcome sight. And that's a Ragnaros in Neobility's Tempo Mage deck. This card is something we haven't seen a bunch this year compared to last.
And I have to imagine that it's because Effigy is starting to become a very strong staple for board control. You were one of the people who, as soon as you saw Effigy, was like, this card actually has a lot of potential to be pretty nuts.
Yeah, that card kind of scaled upwards in power for me. Like, I saw it initially, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, man, if you hit a Pilot Shredder with an Effigy out, that's brutal.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about it. I was like, man, you could just kind of manipulate it to where you play a Ronin and then you have an Effigy out.
They have to deal with it.
And they're just dead. Like, you're not beating that. And so that kind of quickly turned into my mind as what I think is outright the best card in the set, but it's going to take a long time to evolve to that point.
Okay, that's fair. It does feel somewhat balanced or fair play because there are ways for you to also continue to manipulate that, right?
Right. So, like, one of the best ways to counterplay it, by the way, is just start getting really aggressive on the mage builds, and then they're reluctant to kind of use smaller utility minions because they know that you can just pop one of those and they don't get as much value from the Effigy.
Right.
So it does offer some potential counterplay or does pigeonhole their builds in some way. And so a very unique and interesting card that offers a lot of thought outside of actually just playing the game as well as inside the game. One of my favorite cards in the set.
It's funny because it feels like Mage gets a lot of those, right? The Echo Fatigue, for example, is a really cool card. But requires a lot of intricate setup and dynamics with how you interact with the board. Yeah. As well as even the sequence you play your minions.
Yeah, if you're the kind of guy who really likes to build decks and find unique ways to make things happen, Mage is really just your class.
Yeah, Duplicate too, and all these really, really weird combinations.
Yeah. I'm going to see if this Flame Faker can take out some minions here.
Faker.
Yeah. There was like some clip where I saw this guy deal like 16 points of damage over the course of like 2 turns, and I was like, oh my gosh. You're just not going to beat that.
Well, you got to... I mean, it's going to do a lot of damage, too, considering that Harrison Jones is going to come out, and then the Flame Cannon is going to destroy him. Yeah,
this is really a problem for Allandang, and one of the reasons why Tempo Mage matches up so well versus Druid. Druid wants to be playing offense very often. You know, they can play defense for a couple of turns, but they're looking to swing that back around pretty quickly at some point. In this matchup, they're almost always on defense, and that is where Druid struggles, is because eventually it just runs out of stuff to do.
Well, in one turn, because they only have limited mana crystals. Ideally, they could do everything and develop some really strong minions, but Ancient of Lore is too expensive, so you can't remove and play Ancient.
Right. Mage is just making such good use of these early turns that where are you ever catching up if you're the Druid player in this situation? We're talking you need Keepers of the Grove, you need Wraths, you need Swipes on time. You really need something to go uncontested, and that's what this Mage deck is pinpointed at doing, is making sure that it actually just contests everything.
For sure. So, Neobility chooses to go for the Frostbolt, which is an interesting choice. I do believe that the train of thought is that Flame Cannon is less flexible as the game develops, and therefore Frostbolt, you'd want to keep it, hold on to it. But Flame Cannon also adds more potential damage for whatever comes out the following turn, because you do recognize that the Frostbolt here was more expendable.
Yeah, maybe looking at killing like a 6 health minion. Like say your opponent draws Druid of the Claw on this spot. Flame Cannon's going to be much easier to take that out with. and you don't want. I don't think you want to just waste a fireball on that. Ideally, you'd like to use that as a finishing card.
Sure.
So I actually kind of like this play by Neobility because there was no opportunity to develop afterwards. Just get your hero power in.
Yep. Makes sense. I mean, ultimately, consequence is very minimal. Ultimately, I think it's about the same, but he was preparing for that, 5 to 10% of the time, this might make a difference.
Yeah.
It's a very clever maneuver that a lot of people don't think about.
Talking about clever maneuvers, this is not going to be a very subtle game. Soon to be 2 fireballs to the face, potentially.
It's starting to get out of hand. The Flame Cannon here, especially if it's a minion that pops out and takes more damage from this. Oh, howdy.
Yeah. Paggle is probably not going to be making too big of an influence. And
Paggle?
Why? Well, it's... Okay,
it's Paggle.
No, it's definitely Paggle.
It's Paggle because I'm pretty sure that I met the guy one time, and
he pronounces his name wrong.
Hey, I'm Pat Nagel.
Yeah, exactly. It changed it to make it not Paggle.
I see.
Like spell bagel, for instance.
B-A-G-E-L.
Okay, now spell Paggle.
P-A-G-G-L-E.
Oh, I see. I see where you're trying to go with this.
Yeah.
So it's Paglay. We're in agreement.
That's right. He's French. I don't really know if Nat Pagel here that had a really big difference. I don't think he even drew. He just kind of died immediately.
Oh yeah, he soaked up 4 points of damage.
Yeah.
Not a bad.
But it didn't deal any damage either. So you soak up, but you don't deal, and so the board equity actually is worse because you were expecting some actual damage done by the remains of the Shredder.
Right. And so this is kind of the situation where Effigy is actually like playing such a big role too. If you look at this board. Like, how does Allandang actually fight back against this? Even if he kills something, he's just giving something to Neobility in the meantime. And so this is what this Tempo Mage deck wants to do. Take advantage of the early game, and then when you start running out of stuff, it's okay because you have just enough to finish it.
Well, he does know that it is Effigy because he played the Agent of Lawrence, saw nothing, and he just innervated it twice. Of course, there is opportunities for that to be other secrets. I mean, people will be like, well, what if it's ice barriers? Like, well, there is a possibility.
Yeah, it could be Vaporize.
Yeah, it could be Vaporize, but it's not 2014 and people aren't playing Leroy Jenkins anymore. That was a legitimate thing at one point.
This is not Schrodinger's secret. It's never Vaporized right now at this level anyway. One day, eventually, I think it will get to that point.
Oh, sure. And Spellslinger always introduces that possibility of
exactly. And that one of the reasons why I love that card is because of your ability to navigate those kinds of circumstances. Not always there, but
that Flame Waker just goes face.
Yeah, it knows where to go. It knows what's up.
It knows where the place is, at least. Allandang still very much in the same situation. Each turn that passes, it feels like the previous turn had 0 impact. It's like he's still in trouble because the Flame Waker's on board. He still hasn't asserted board dominance yet.
Yeah, so something... Oh my gosh.
Talk about, like, Pilot Shredder drops. That was equivalent of a Pilot Shredder drop.
Yeah, that's a little inappropriate. That's a rough one to deal with. He does have 2 swipes to deal with this, but something else that's happening is Neobility's actually kind of recognized that this game state was possible. This Ragnaros is kind of the direction he's playing towards. He's dealing enough damage to Allandang to put him into a tough spot, and at the same time, he's running Allandang out of resources. So the Ragnaros should be able to clean up this situation almost every time Allandang doesn't have Big Game Hunter.
It's a good point. And he's really draining him, like you said, but he still has ways to refill, too. The Agidrake is a very nice drop the following turn.
It's just excellently played by Allandang, I think. I'm sorry, by Neobility this game. And Allandang, I think so as well. He's done everything he can to stay in this one, but just at the end of the day, not necessarily enough.
2, 4, plus 6, 7, 11 damage potential if it hits the face, so I guess that's not enough. Yeah, he might not need Rag, but we'll see. Yeah,
that's really kind of the point of this, too, is he doesn't necessarily need Rag. It's like a safety net card.
Oh, man.
Hey, just what you always wanted, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. Would you just Savage Roar one time to keep the Shade stealth?
Probably. You might even actually swing with the Shade. You might just have to start getting the job done.
Sure. Just have that damage add up. Hopefully it doesn't have the exact removal for it.
Yeah, I mean, because with just a Savage Roar in your hand, where's this damage coming from? Where's your defense coming from even?
Sure. Makes sense. The hero power doesn't really matter much. All he's really evaluating is whether he attacks with the Shade or not. So if he gets 5 damage and 4 damage the following turn, I mean, who knows? Maybe he can pick Force of Nature Savage Roar.
Well, he's going to have to fight through Ragnaros first.
Ragnaros hitting the face, I can't tell if that's exactly the good or bad scenario, but I'm pretty sure it's okay considering that even if he had combo, he had 20 damage.
Yeah, I think he wants to hit the Shade and then just rip Big Game Hunter and hope for the best. So step number 1's complete.
Yeah, so now it's Big Game Hunter.
Oh!
snap.
Wow.
It's still not out of the woods just yet, though. He's still far away from being able to be safe.
But you know what kind of draw that is, though. I'm not going to.
Yeah, that's a pretty magnanimous draw.
Magnanimous. Someone's been reading the dictionary.
Yes, in my free time.
Yeah.
After I am done Fedora shopping.
Well, you know, Ragnaros wasn't able to get the job done this time, but I think Archmage Antonidas may be able to provide Neobility with just the help he needed.
Well, there's multiple ways you could play this. Suppose you could go the highest damage route and then pick off. Like, there's a pretty high chance that Flamewaker spell kills off the Big Game Hunter with the hero power.
You know, it's actually funny that you mentioned that because he can still. Oh.
Whoa!
He can actually lose this game now.
That's a plot twist.
Wow.
Because of Force of Nature Savage.
Yeah. That Force of Nature could just outright win this game.
No way.
No way. Allandang with back-to-back huge draws is going to seal this game up. I cannot believe it. Frodan, what just happened?
I'm speechless.
What just happened? That's unbelievable. The sequence all started with Shade of Naxxramas coming out of stealth and dealing 5 damage. Ragnaros hitting the Shade of Naxxramas. Big Game Hunter getting top decked, and then 2 whiffs on the Flamewaker on that Big Game Hunter, and then a Force of Nature draw. That's got to be thousands to 1 to happen.
Oh, well, you know what? You always talk about playing for that 1% chance. That was 0.1%, and you're right. It's that was extremely unlikely based off the exact sequence. But that's card games. You know, this is kind of what happens sometimes when you hit the runner.
This is the situation that you play the game for.
Yeah.
Is that when you're that underdog?
Think about Allandang. He's like he's never felt more alive than just now.
Dang.
The adrenaline rush is going through very fast.
Oh.
But for Neobility, I mean, as much as he looks stoic in that picture, I would be hard-pressed to find any human on the planet that has 0 reaction to that.
Oh, you're going to have a reaction to that. I mean, and this is like kind of one of the reasons. This game is like such a prime example of what you have to go through at times to be a winner at this game. Like, if Neobility, he's not out of the series just yet. I mean, look what happened to him in that game. The idea of winning 3 games in a row after that, like, it's such a menial task when you consider what just happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as calling it Paggle. I think we've seen a lot of shenanigans happen in that previous game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
I'm just messing with you. So we have one more game that Allandang has to win. No worries, man. Nothing but love. We have the Warrior coming out here from Allandang. Now, Neobility, he's lost with his Paladin. He's lost with the Mage. What does he feel like is his best chance to strike down this Warrior?
Well, honestly, I feel like to me, if he gets past Warrior with the Secrets Paladin, he's got a pretty decent chance at actually winning this. We saw Firebat earlier versus Tempo Mage versus Warrior. The kind of power that it provides to have those early game plays that are unanswered. Very strong plays. You can tell Neobility's even going with Tempo Mage outright to try to put the pressure on. And Druid, it hasn't been performing fantastically versus Warrior pretty much all week long. But this is one of those spots where I feel like it may be rooted in how the Druids are actually drawing their hands. And just not really having the pushes through the middle of the game and to the end of the game. Like in Amaz's match, a couple matches ago, for instance, he was able to have a turn 3 through 5 plays and completely blew his opponent out of the water with Druid versus Patron Warrior. You have to have that consistent heavy pressure, so I don't feel like that match is completely over it. The one it's hinging on to me is that Secrets Paladin versus Warrior.
Okay. I can definitely identify with that, too. The Secrets Paladin versus Warrior is always a very weird matchup because a lot of the small minions help put pressure, but then they also feed into everything else that the Patron Warrior excels at. So in a way, it's like both helping and hurting you.
Yeah, exactly. The double-edged sword.
Hungry Dragon. Interesting. Very powerful tempo play. Speaking of which, like a 5/6 for 1 mana. Well, 3, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you spent 2 mana to buff this Mana Worm. This 1-drop's actually really important, though. Blood Imp would be terrible.
Nah.
Ardent Squire's not too bad, though.
Not bad at all, considering that, you know, it'll live through trading with the Mana Worm or even do other stuff. If, you know, for example, you know, Cruel Taskmaster makes it a 3/1. Yeah.
I'm actually kind of curious where Allandang wants to go with this because, you know, you kind of joke around about Cruel Taskmaster making it a 3/1. That's not an unreasonable option, I don't think. It just matters how he follows it up. And I think at the end of the day, it may be just costing him a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But the bigger story here is this 5/6. This is going to check. There's no execute. There's nothing like a shield slam. That guy's going to get in there for quite a few damage.
Hungry Dragon being able to be relevant. It would be pretty sweet. I think a lot of people wrote it off as just a card that should have been cool, but just is not good. But in this specific scenario, it's actually very effective.
Yeah.
And the effigy, too, behind it is also very interesting, too, because it's like, well, now I have to remove either Hungry Dragon or Pilot Shredder. It's like neither of those are very good options.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the kind of power this card provides. It's like proactively playing a secret. But not only that, but this secret's also throwing off what Allandang thinks this could possibly be, because this could easily be Mirror Entity. It could easily be Counterspell. Those are all secrets that make its way into this deck. And so very likely to throw off one or two of his plays.
Well, thankfully, he has so many small minis that Mirror Entity is actually not that big of a problem. In fact, it's pretty good. However, it doesn't work out that way, so he does see, okay, not Mirror Entity, still could be Counterspell. Interesting that there's also Loot Holder in his deck. I think that's one of the choices that players have divided upon, because they felt like Slam was the equivalent of having Loot Holder, but an immediate draw.
Yeah, it had largely kind of rotated out of the format. I'm sorry, out of this deck's rotation for quite a while. The decks have been so refined that players just been finding ways to try to make better use of it.
Right, but minion combat-wise, Loot Holder is still very good. You draw the card while doing the damage.
Yeah, nobody wants to invest a hero power into it on turn 2. They want to kind of play their minions and keep rolling.
Sure, and they don't want to collide like Mad Scientist into it, so it helps you with that respect. Well, looks like he does have some ways to stabilize eventually, but the problem is that ultimately that secret is still problematic overall. He still doesn't know that if it's Counterspell or Effigy.
Yeah, I think he's pretty likely to learn very soon which one it's going to be.
He still has a test for it, though. You know, that's the problem. If he's careless and it ends up killing this Hungry Dragon accidentally.
Yeah, that's really where the big difference is going to be made. And so Neobility, it looks like he wants to roll with the Water Elemental instead of this Piloted Shredder, which is actually kind of interesting to me considering that he does have Effigy out. If the Piloted Shredder dies, which is a pretty likely one to be targeted, he's getting so much value from the Effigy at that point. Just a little bit surprising that he's choosing to go with this Water Elemental. Obviously, shutting off weapons is a concern to him.
Yeah, and it will be, considering that the weapons are the key like people will talk about the foundation of Warrior, and they're like, well, it's obviously the War Song Commander. Well, you know, it looks like the Patron, but they forget about how big of a role cards like Deathspite play into everything. This is also a test for Counterspell, and now Allandang will like, no, it's definitely Effigy.
At this point, I feel like he's gotten some bad news, where he's like,
yeah, it's not the best, but he can still deal with whatever comes out through an Execute. I don't even know what the worst case scenario is. I probably have to imagine Pit Lord and Hungry Dragon are both the same case.
Fortunately, he's going to be out of mana after this, so Windspeaker.
Oh, that's one of the better ones.
Yeah,
here.
just a 3/3. I think it's definitely one of the better situations for Allandang.
If only if it had the ability to give Wind Fury to adjacent minions. Right?
What a great card that would be.
That'll actually. Do you think that would still bring Shaman back into the metagame?
Well, I always thought the fact
if this guy gave Wind Fury to adjacent minions.
I always felt like the fact that he was just a 2-mana 3/3 was really what was going to bring it back. You know, considering you get the Wind Fury for free on the minion afterwards.
Maybe, yeah. 2-mana 3/3 makes sense. Value. But
Pilot Shredder, perfect placement, by the way. Something we haven't seen necessarily all tournament long.
It's true. Some people get a little bit careless with placing their Pilot Shredder. Because what if they get, you know, a Flame Tongue Totem?
Yeah, this is really where Allandang is going to turn this all back around. You know, Neobility's attacks have been fantastic, and it's been looking like everything's rolling his way. But this is really a matter of hand context. He's got 2 Armor Smiths, Orwin, and Execute, and he's got 3 Grim Patrons already sitting on board. There's no way this game is slipping away after this turn.
Okay, so draws first, so that way he could evaluate what he wants to do after it. Makes total sense. The Patrons allow him to control the state of the board and gain a lot of armor. However, he does have a couple of options open. He can drop 1 Armor Smith, start using Fiery War Axe. That way he doesn't have to give up too much, and then he can start whirlwinding to climb back onto the board. He can also use Execute. There's lots of different ways to go about this.
Yeah, there's so much different stuff to do here. And he's actually going to go with 1 Armor Smith to lead. That's really interesting to me.
Oh, I think he was hoping for something less than 3 attack.
It looks like he just wants to whirlwind instead. So
Okay.
you know that I'm totally okay with that as well.
I think he was keeping his options flexible.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think is
because
happening.
he had the option to play Fiery War Axe and kill off whatever comes off. Like
Well, he's frozen at that. So.
oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I forgot about that.
But what he was
My
looking for
apologies.
really was the Shredder drop. If the Shredder drops something small, he doesn't have to play that whirlwind necessarily. He could just duplicate based off the combat. But if it drops something like a 3-power minion, like it did, going to be have to using whirlwind. So kind of cool on him to keep that second Armor Smith in hand. Still very much out of range of burn at this point. Doesn't need to have that much armor, and that's really kind of what this deck is all about. Is how much is enough? You don't need everything. You just need enough.
All right. Well, Flame Cannon just deals above the patrons. It's like one of the scenarios you were hoping for. If it just didn't hit the patron, you'd be kind of sad.
Just domes him.
I think, to be honest, though, maybe it was one of the scenarios where if hitting the Armor Smith, you feel like you could go for damage, but at the same time, you recognize that your opponent has almost a full hand. This is starting to get out of control.
Yeah, this game you're kind of seeing the other side of what Grim Patron can do in certain kinds of matchups, which is it can play these grind battles at certain times. If it gets a little bit of tempo rolling with Grim Patrons, the Battle Rage can give them so many extra cards and so many extra options that from the other side of the board, you don't really know if you're playing offense or defense just yet.
Sure.
And that's a dangerous position to be in because when your game plan starts deviating, you're just all over the place afterwards. There's not really much you can do about it.
Has to Fireball a patron, and there's more patrons where that came from.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And he's going to gain more life, too. Armor Smith is an option to start making sure that he's secure.
He's going to start with Battle Rage, though. Allandang is all about having maximum options. And this is kind of the mark of some of these players that are very strong and very dangerous to play against. They understand the value of this card advantage.
Yeah, I like setting up Death Spite so that way you can go for big combos. You have War Song, you have 2 Frothings. Second Armor Smith is reasonable, but it's also just something to just put onto the board here.
And even Sack Grim Patron says he doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Don't really blame him. He's got plenty in hand.
He's
to make do.
I think he's exactly this. The Flame Strike was something that's on the back of his mind. So he could hypothetically go Inner Rage into another patron so he's like healthier, but there's no point in investing into that if you're just going to go for big damage. Ragnaros also is somewhat of a death sentence because it's going to withstand a lot of damage and as a result enhance the power of those Frothing Berserkers.
Yeah, that's going to do it. 2 Frothing Berserkers and the Death Spite second charge, plus an Inner Rage, just in case it wasn't enough damage. Just what a performance from Allandang to 3-0 Neobility. Game number 2. Wow, I mean, what a shocker that one was, too. I don't think anyone in a million years would have expected that outcome.
Some really
to take place.
Very crazy moments, some very predictable moments, and some moments that honestly it was very interesting to see that Allen chose that line and it worked out for him.
Yeah.
And Neobility will have to wait till next year to be able to try again because he is gone. He's done.
Yeah, I mean, a fantastic run for him this year. Again, 4 top 20 finishes in the 2015 season. Nothing to scoff at whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there's some people out there who are looking for some teammates, and you're pretty strong yourself. Neobility may be a guy you kind of want to try to contact because I hear he's pretty good at Hearthstone. And
he's fantastic.
Looking for some more practice.
Absolutely. So congratulations to Allandang. He advances to the next day where we're going to see him try to play for the top 6 spots. And that means Neobility's run has ended. But that doesn't mean our broadcast has ended either. We have one more match for today. It is Muzzy versus Jason Zoe. A couple of players that people might be familiar with. I know you are very familiar with Muzzy.
Yeah, after watching
watching
15 of his matches through HPL. You know, wonderful comeback story he had there. Started out 2-5, ended up making the top 8. Yeah, that's a pretty big turnaround from the start of that season.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, we still have to see how that top 8 ends up panning out for the rest of the year. We're done with match number 7. When we come back, we're going to have the final game of the day. It'll be Muzzy versus Jason Zoe. You're watching the Hearthstone World Championships, day number 7.